You're listening to Business Extra, a podcast by the National in Abu Dhabi. I'm your host, Cody Combs, speaking to you from the COP28 summit in Dubai. Simply put, seawater and farms don't mix. The salt is a death sentence to the soil, and it just doesn't work. Or so we thought. A UAE startup is turning that idea on its head. Manhat, an Emirati-founded startup launched in 2019, is using proprietary natural water distillation technology to speed up and capture the evaporation of ocean water on the surface. Founder Dr. Saeed Alhassan wants to harness his invention to build floating farms using the fresh water collected to irrigate and grow crops right at the source. But before we start, if you want to get all the latest episodes of Business Extra, please follow and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. I'm joined now by Manhat founder and CEO Dr. Saeed Alhassan. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
First and foremost, can you tell us the story about the founding of Manhat? Where did the idea come from, the story behind the name?
Okay, so the short version is that I was inspired by a documentary on National Geographic about people's survival, lack of water. And the one that caught my eyes was water collection from fog in Chile, where they spread sheets to collect the water from the fog itself. In any case, my train of thought led me toward this current technology where all source of water is always the evaporation. So that's where I developed the technology based on that premise. Now, Manhat itself, when I wanted to launch the startup, I wanted to, come up with a name that allow the startup to reflect what we're trying to do. So the word Manhat, it's called, in Arabic, it means the apex of a human brain, or intellect. But I came about using this name or selecting this name by basically looking at the anagrams of the four elements in the Greek classical understanding of the world, which basically water, fire, air, and earth. So in Arabic, each first letter for these words are ma, nar, hawa, ard. So that's why the word manha. And then I use a dictionary to show that if you add another T or tab in Arabic, it gives you the word manha. But now we are preferred to use the word manhat to pronounce the T instead of making the T silent.
Point well taken. Is this a game changer for agriculture potentially?
We believe that if we optimize our cost, where at the beginning it's competitive with the current reverse osmosis desalination, then we are really providing a solution that can serve many different farmers across the globe. Because one of the challenge in farming is that even the classical areas where you have a lot of water farming activities, they depend on underground water, and underground water is being depleted at an alarming rate where they will not have access to fresh water anymore. So if we come up with a way to produce water really independent of the type of source water itself. So our technology works with seawater, it works with brackish water, it works with high saline water, it works with sewage. So the idea is if we deploy it and the cost is really competitive, at least now with reverse osmosis, then we can provide this as a solution for farmers to enhance their farming, activities and not worry about water. Obviously, our goal is to make it even cheaper. That will allow you to use this water for activities beyond your limits, especially if you want to grow or to establish, let's say, forests that's only dedicated for greening the areas or to block, desertification. Then when you have water that is so cheap, you're not worried about the cost of water. You can use it for other activities beyond farming and irrigation.
How do some of Manhat's products work in terms of removing salt from the seawater?
So technically, we don't remove salt from the seawater. Actually, if you look at our technology, the idea behind it is inspired by the natural water cycle. If you examine the natural water cycle, you notice that evaporation happens when solar radiation impacts or comes through the open water surfaces. We're talking about oceans, gulfs, rivers, any open water surface will always lose water through evaporation. Now, evaporation is the constant. What we get from the natural water cycle is the rain, which is infrequent, especially in this region where we get maybe 10 days of rain per year. But evaporation happening every day. And the way our technology works is that we place our devices on open water surface. So instead of allowing the vapor to go up to the atmosphere, we trap it inside the device so that when the temperature goes down at night, the water will condense. And then that water can be collected in a reservoir and can be produced as pure salt-free water. That's why we don't deal with the salt in the ocean per se, because there's no salt in the water vapor that goes into the atmosphere.
What are some of the problems faced from the usual methods of doing this? This is the problem that essentially has been trying to be solved for thousands of years.
Yeah.
What are some of the problems by people who do this with the usual method? Is it labor intensive? Is it energy intensive?
The evolution of water, let's say purifications overall throughout human, evolution, we see that it depends where you are. For example, back in the day, activated carbon or charcoal is used to purify water by simple filtration process. But now, the dominating process to produce water at a scale in an inexpensive way is through reverse osmosis desalination. Now, reverse osmosis desalination will work perfectly if you have electricity, because it's the most water you can produce for the electricity that you generate. But it comes with two issues. The CO2 emission, because when you produce electricity, right now the mix is still 80% fossil fuel-based energy generation. So by extension, you are emitting CO2 while you're producing the water. The second challenge is inherent to reverse osmosis. While it's the most energy efficient, what you end up doing is you collect water from the ocean. Let's say you collect 3 liters of water from the ocean. And what you do, you move some of the salts from one part to the other. And you ended up with really the following ratio. 1 liter will be pure water that can be used. It still have some salt, but it can be drinkable. The other 2 liters have more salt because you took the salt from the fresh compartment to the other one. So this 2 liters of water is called brine. And currently the practice is that the brine is discharged back to the ocean or the Gulf or the water source where you took it from. With that, it has the following problems. The brine itself collects a lot of contaminants from the water processing because the water goes through a journey. It is in contact with many equipment. So you have a lot of metal that are dissolving in the brine. You have a lot of organic matters that are carcinogenic and toxic. And all of them are put with the concentrated salt brine and goes back to the ocean, and it has a long-term effect on the aquatic life. So these are the two challenges with the current desalination. So for us, we wanted to provide an alternative where we ask ourselves really the philosophical questions. Can we produce water without electricity just to give ourselves a chance in producing water, the most precious element, without needing the electricity itself, because that's how we always survived and flourished as human. You know, all the civilizations actually flourish in water, close to water sources. So that's what we are trying to do. And honestly, our technology, if you think about it, has been tried and people have used it, but it's always at a small scale, and nobody thought about making this technology as cheap as possible. It's always a novelty that people try to do it. It's even been featured in some movies like Life of Pi. If you recall, he used like a cone looking plastic piece and put seawater inside, and he produced water out of it. But that piece itself is really expensive. If you go to the market now, this small plastic bag is like 500 dirham. So it's not practical, and it's only for survival applications. So we wanted to make it in a way that produce water as cheap as possible by producing and manufacturing the right combination of optimized configuration of the technology.
Does this mean more food production and eventually food more readily available?
Yes. So the idea is it's multiple levels. So the first thing is we need to make sure that we produce enough water that will satisfy human needs plus plants and animals. Because one thing we should always focus on is that we are not alone in this planet. And if you provide water for animals and plants, then you open the doors for possibilities beyond imagination. Because the human activity has already led to a loss of biodiversity, and you bring them back mainly through water. If you provide water, life will flourish. So, with that in mind, the idea that our technology can contribute in expanding or providing solutions for animals and plants, especially the one that we have impacted directly, because animals right now, a lot of them in different areas, depends on us purifying the water, because most of the water resources have been contaminated with one chemicals or the other. You're talking about the forever chemical. You're talking about some the dyes that are coming out from clothing industries. If you look at all sources of water, there's something contaminated in the water always. Now, our technology can purify the water back to its purest state, so anyone can use it for whatever application they are interested in.
So what would this mean in terms of food security for the United Arab Emirates and the region?
For us, this will be, especially in UAE, we have an arid land. We don't have a lot of arable land. So providing water is the starting point for food security. The next level is obviously making sure that when you grow any crops, you can grow them in a sustainable fashion. Some crops we cannot grow just because of the harsh environment. But some can actually be grown easily, including the millet, for example. I believe even rice can be grown here, but it's water intensive. That's why people don't try to grow rice. You can grow wheat. There are already some examples of areas in UAE where wheat was successfully grown and cultivated. So yes, it will open the door for us to grow the stable crops. We're not talking about the green leaves, because those are more or less have been optimized to grow in many different conditions, and the market is already well satisfied. But the stable crops, the wheats, the rice, millets, corn, they need more water, and I think the area is suitable for that, especially for us. More heat, more solar radiation makes our technology works better to allow us to grow more crops that are usually we are not able to grow them because of the availability of fresh water.
What would it mean for the region in general? Is this method you're using widely used in other countries throughout the Middle East, or is this unique?
Not yet. So because we are deep tech startups, we're trying to bring this product to the masses. I mentioned early on the example of survival kit, where it's already sold for 500 dirham almost per unit. That's not practical, and it's only used if a ship sank in the middle of the ocean. But for us, we would like to bring this technology to the masses by manufacturing the units and making sure that they are produced with the lowest cost possible. So currently, there's no, let's say, similar products per se. There are some startups I know about in the US. They're also adapting similar approach. But while the science is already established per se, the market and the economics of bringing the product to the market, I believe, is lacking, and we would like to be among the first people to basically bring this technology to the market as soon as we can.
When we first heard about this technology a few years ago, we did a video with you, and that video regionally went viral. Got a lot of shares on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, a lot of comments. Why do you think it resonated with so many people?
I think historically, if you look at this region, the population did not exceed more than probably 500,000 across the entire peninsula, except Yemen and Oman, for example. And the water challenge is inherently woven in our imagination and in our daily lives. I can still remember, when family members go and basically take water from wells back in the 70s and 80s. Because at the time, still running water was not as readily available as now. So people know about water in this region more than any other region in the world because uh, it was the starting point for the economy to flourish the way it flourishes right now. If you don't have water, then you don't have people, and then you cannot actually sustain an economy. So that's why the response was highly positive and encouraging to us because people understand the problem of water scarcity in this region.
Where do things stand right now with the company? For lack of a better word, financially,
Yeah.
are you fundraising wise? How are things going?
When we started, we have different business model completely than what we are trying to do right now, and it's an evolution. You pivot left and right depending on many different factors. In the past year alone, we were able to raise almost close to $100,000 through grants from programs like Expo Live program and Ma'an in Abu Dhabi. And the status of our company right now is we are focusing. We came up with almost a final product that we would like to launch in the market and a manufacturing path to scale this product as much as we can. Because if you cannot make it at scale, it will not work. So we resolve these issues in terms of the path we are going to select. And the next step for us is to launch a pilot based on the manufactured unit that we manufacture in-house. So we can test the viability of growing key crops. Let's say alfalfa, for example, and millets are two promising crops that we would like to try in the next year. And in terms of financial, let's say, situation, we are at the seed stage as a startup. And hopefully in the next a few months we can land our first direct investments to allow us to launch the pilot as quickly as we can. There are also other options to allow us to launch the pilot without the direct investment.
And what are you hoping to get out of COP28? I know you're opening up a stand relatively soon to showcase some of your technology.
Well, so for us, COP28 represents an opportunity to showcase what we can offer. And it's a good meeting point where you have the business people and technical people and the policymakers to look at the things we are trying to do here. I mean, the challenge with water problem is that it's local. Each country has different issues. Some countries have too much water, some have no water. In countries, some areas have too much water and other areas don't have any water. But the opportunity to meet and network with potential investors or technology provider or NGO-driven organization allow us the possibility to bring our product to the market. Because without this part, all of our work will not be useful to anyone, and we will lose the momentum. But I think we are more hopeful at the moment than ever because we have resolved the manufacturing elements of our technology, the scalability elements, and it's just a matter of a few more investments or grants that will allow us to go forward. And with COP28, that opened the door for us already, and we believe we can, get something out of it.
I don't want to get too far ahead because in business, as in life, you have to crawl before you can walk. But we do notice in some of your marketing materials, you showcase this floating farm.
Yes.
That also gets a lot of discussion. Can you talk a little bit about your vision for that?
Yeah, so actually this has started way back when we applied for the patents. We have 3 patents. One of them was already have the elements or integrated elements of the technology for the floating farm. And the concept is, for us, is focus on making the floating farm as efficient and as cheap as possible. So when we launched that concept, it's basically a way to showcasing the technology of how it works. And the reason for a floating farm are multiple reasons. The first one is it's like a defense mechanism against rise of sea level. Let's say you have a lot of farming inland. For whatever reason, you cannot provide water. While a floating farm will always produce water because you have access to the ocean and you can grow crops in an efficient way. The second thing is, which is a concept that can even extend beyond what we are trying to do, is if you grow something in the ocean, the beautiful thing about the ocean is that its temperature is always moderate. It will not reach the same level of temperatures like an inland, areas. So if you have a farm inland, its temperature in the summer will be extremely high. So we have record temperature in different areas in the region that can reach to 50 degrees Celsius. The ocean does not reach that level. Most of the ocean temperature will moderate between 25, 30, 32, which is fantastic for farming. If you think about it, a lot of crops will benefit from a stable temperature across the year. Yes, there will be some variations between summer and winter, but it's not to a level where it's going to be extremely cold or extremely hot. So that's another way why we think the floating farm concept will work beautifully to grow any crops anywhere, even in arid regions where the temperature inland is scorching hot. In the water, it's going to always be moderate.
Dr. Saeed Alhassan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and hopefully we can continue our journey.
That's a wrap for this episode of Business Extra, recorded at COP28 in Dubai. Thanks so much for listening. Please remember to follow to get all of our updates as soon as they come out. This episode was produced by Doa Fareed, Phil Green, and Arthur Edison. I'm Cody Combs, reporting from COP28.